At the reading of my grandfather's will, my cousin smiled as he inherited the family vineyard. "It should go to someone who can actually manage it," he said. My mother nodded. "Be grateful he left you anything at all." I said nothing. But when I handed the attorney the sealed envelope my grandfather gave me, the room fell silent. I don't think I'll ever forget the sound of that sentence leaving Mr. Vaughn's mouth. "The vineyard, the estate, and all associated business holdings are bequeathed to James Winters, effective immediately." For a second, I thought my ears were playing tricks on me. The room seemed to tilt slightly, oxygen suddenly in short supply. My cousin Marcus sat across from me, his expression shifting from thinly veiled boredom to triumphant satisfaction in the span of a heartbeat. My mother reached over and squeezed my hand, her grip firm but cold. "It's for the best, James," she whispered, not quite meeting my highs. "You know how these things work." I did know. I had spent the last 15 years of my life learning exactly how these things worked. 15 years of pruning vines alongside workers at dawn, of studying viticulture and enology at UC Davis, of gradually modernizing production while respecting traditions that had sustained 4 generations of my family. 15 years of being the only Winters who actually cared about Crescent Ridge beyond its balance sheet. But none of that mattered now. Not according to the document Mr. Vaughn was reading with practiced neutrality. Marcus caught my eye across the room and gave me a small sympathetic smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It should go to someone who can actually manage it," he said, voice soft but carrying easily in the hushed room. Grandfather understood that. I didn't respond. My tongue felt numb, my thoughts scattered like leaves in a storm. My fingers trembled slightly as I reached for the water glass in front of me, trying to appear calm, composed. I could feel the weight of everyone's stares pressing down on me, my Aunt Barbara dabbing at non-existent tears, Uncle Philip studying his manicured nails, my mother's rigid posture beside me. The vineyard had been my life, not just work, my actual home. The stone cottage nestled between the old growth vines and a creek, the cellar where I'd first learned to taste the difference between vintages under my grandfather's patient guidance. The fields where I proposed to Emma 3 summers ago, kneeling among vines heavy with ripening fruit. Gone. All of it. Mr. Vaughn cleared his throat, continuing with various smaller bequests. I barely registered the mention of my name, something about a modest financial provision. The family ring. Some books. Trinkets. Consolation prizes. My chest felt tight, each breath requiring conscious effort. How could he do this? After everything we'd shared, after all the promises, the plans we'd made together during those final months as his health declined. My grandfather had been more than a mentor. He had been my closest friend, my advocate, the one person in our fractured family who seemed to truly see me. Marcus was already on his phone, thumbs typing rapidly, no doubt sharing the news with his business partners. He'd been trying to convince my grandfather to sell the vineyard for years, to develop the prime acreage into luxury homes and a golf course. Diversification, he called it. Destruction. My grandfather had always countered. Or so I thought. The reading continued, but my mind was elsewhere, stuck on a memory from 2 weeks ago. My grandfather, frail but clear-eyed, sitting up in his bed as sunlight streamed through the windows of the master bedroom where generations of Winters had been born and died. "James," he'd said, voice raspy but firm, "there's something I need you to hold on to." He pressed a sealed envelope into my hands, my name written across the front in his distinctive slanted script. "Don't open this unless something doesn't seem right after I'm gone. Promise me." I'd nodded, confused but trusting. "I promise." "Good boy," he'd said, patting my hand. "Remember what I taught you about patience. Some vintages need time to reveal their true character." The envelope had sat untouched in my desk drawer since that day, until this morning when some instinct had prompted me to slip it into my jacket pocket before heading to Mr. Vaughn's office. Now, as Mr. Vaughn folded the will and looked around the room with professional detachment, I felt the weight of that envelope against my chest like a stone. Something doesn't seem right. Nothing seems right. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping softly against the hardwood floor. All eyes turned to me. Marcus looked irritated at the interruption of his texting. "Mr. Vaughn," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "There's something else." I reached into my jacket and withdrew the envelope, its seal unbroken, my grandfather's initials pressed into the dark blue wax. "My grandfather gave me this 2 weeks ago." He said to present it only if something didn't seem right after he was gone. The room went completely still. My mother's hand, which had been rhythmically patting my arm in what I suppose she thought was comfort, froze mid-motion. Marcus slowly put down his phone. Mr. Vaughn's eyebrows rose slightly as he accepted the envelope, turning it over carefully in his hands. "This appears to be in Edward's handwriting," he confirmed, studying the seal. He glanced at me. "You haven't opened it?" I shook my head. He asked me not to unless necessary. My Aunt Barbara made a small dismissive sound. "Really, James? Always with the dramatics. The will is clear." But Mr. Vaughn was already breaking the seal, the crack of wax uncommonly loud in the silent room. He removed several folded pages, quickly scanning their contents. His expression remained professional, but I noticed a slight tightening around his eyes. "This," he said after a moment, "is a codicil to Edward's will, properly executed and notarized 3 weeks ago." He looked up, gaze sweeping across the assembled family members before settling on me. "It substantially alters the previous arrangements." Marcus stood abruptly. "What exactly does that mean?" His voice had lost its earlier smoothness, a sharp edge now evident. Mr. Vaughn adjusted his glasses. "It means, Mr. Winters, that your grandfather made changes to his will shortly before his death." He turned to the first page and began to read. "I, Edward James Winters, being of sound mind, do hereby declare this to be a codicil to my last will and testament. Recent events have brought to my attention attempts to influence my decisions regarding the disposition of my estate, particularly Crescent Ridge Vineyard. I have reason to believe that documents I previously signed were misrepresented to me during a period of medication-induced confusion." My mother made a small, strangled sound beside me. Marcus remained standing, his face draining of color. Mr. Vaughn continued, "It has always been my intention that Crescent Ridge remain in caring, knowledgeable hands that will preserve its legacy. Therefore, I hereby revoke all previous bequests regarding the vineyard and estate, and instead leave all associated properties, business interests, and assets to my grandson, James Edward Winters, who has demonstrated both the ability and commitment to steward this legacy." The letter continued with legal specifics, but I barely heard them. A rushing sound filled my ears, like standing too close to the waterfall at the north end of the property. I felt lightheaded, untethered, as if I might float away from the leather chair grounding me to this suddenly unfamiliar reality. Marcus was the first to break the stunned silence. "This is absurd," he snapped, color returning to his face in angry splotches. Grandfather was confused, heavily medicated. This supposed codicil was clearly written under duress or manipulation. He looked directly at me, eyes narrowed. "We all know who had the most access to him in those final weeks." "Marcus," my Uncle Philip warned quietly, but Marcus ignored him. "Convenient that you just happened to have this letter," he continued, voice rising. "Very convenient timing, James." I met his gaze steadily, the initial shock beginning to recede, replaced by a slow burning clarity. "The timing was grandfather's choice," I said, "as was the decision to give me this letter rather than sending it directly to Mr. Vaughn." "He was testing you," my mother suddenly interjected, her voice tight. All eyes turned to her, seeing if you'd be honorable enough to present it, even knowing what it might contain. She wasn't looking at me, but at Marcus. Something passed between them, something old and sharp and knowing. Mr. Vaughn cleared his throat. "The codicil includes a personal letter that Edward instructed be read aloud if this document needed to be presented." He adjusted his glasses again. "Shall I continue?" Marcus opened his mouth to object, but my Aunt Barbara spoke first. "Yes," she said firmly. "Let's hear what my father had to say." Mr. Vaughn nodded and unfolded the final page. "To my family, if you are hearing these words, then something has occurred that made James question the provisions of my will, and he has made the difficult decision to present this letter. For this, I am grateful, as it confirms what I already knew about his character. 6 months ago, when my health first began to fail, I was approached separately by several family members with concerns about the future of Crescent Ridge. While these conversations were framed as being for my benefit and peace of mind, their true purpose became increasingly clear. It was not the vineyard's legacy they sought to protect, but their own financial interests. During a particularly difficult period when my medication left me disoriented, I signed documents that were presented as routine estate planning updates. I later discovered these documents substantially altered my wishes for the vineyard's future, placing it in hands that would not honor its true value. I could have confronted this deception immediately, but after a lifetime of watching this family operate, I recognized an opportunity to reveal true character. Sometimes in viniculture, the only way to strengthen a vine is to subject it to stress, to see if it has the resilience to overcome challenge and produce something of quality despite adversity. James has been that vine. While others saw Crescent Ridge as an asset to be liquidated, he saw it as a living legacy. While others visited only when it suited them, he committed his life to its soil. He knows that what makes our wine exceptional isn't just the grapes or the process, but the connection to the land itself, something that cannot be replicated or replaced. To James, I am sorry for this final test, but I needed to be certain you would fight for what matters, even when it seemed already lost. The vineyard is yours, as it always should have been. To those who sought to manipulate an old man's final wishes, I forgive you, but I do not forget. May you find something in your lives worth caring about beyond its monetary value. The true worth of a legacy isn't measured in dollars or acreage, but in respect, for the past, for the land, and for each other. Remember that when you taste the wines from vintages I will never see. With enduring love despite our imperfections, Edward Winters. The room was completely silent. No one moved or spoke. Even the usual creaks from the old building seemed to stop, as if in respect. I sat still, letting my grandfather's words sink in like rain after a long dry season. I thought I'd feel justified, maybe even proud, but instead, I felt something deeper, sadness, yes, but also a strong sense of gratitude. Even after his death, he was still teaching me. Marcus moved first. He grabbed his coat so roughly it knocked the chair over. The crash broke the silence like a snapped string. "This isn't over," he said, his voice low and angry. "You'll be hearing from my lawyers." He walked to the door and paused beside me. "He always played favorites. Don't think this makes you special." Then he left, shutting the door behind him. One by one, the others followed. My aunt and uncle gave me awkward condolences, cousins looked away, and old family friends seemed uneasy but quietly relieved. Soon, only my mom, Mr. Vaughn, and I were left. My mother sat stiffly, hands tightly clasped. "Your grandfather never really cared about keeping the family united," she said, her tone flat. I looked at her carefully, maybe really seeing her for the first time in years. "Did you know?" I asked. "About the documents Marcus had him sign while he was medicated." She looked at me briefly, then turned away. I knew Marcus had plans. I didn't know all the details. "But you didn't warn him, or me." She stood, brushing her suit like there were wrinkles. "The vineyard has caused arguments in this family for a long time, James. Your grandfather was stuck in the past. He ignored what made sense financially. That sentimentality is what built everything we have," I said. "It's what matters." She sighed like I was still a child missing the point. "Foundations can be sold, James, and for a good price." She picked up her purse, then hesitated. "He always loved you most, from the start. The rest of us never really had a chance." There was something in her voice beyond bitterness, something old and sad. For a moment, I saw the young girl she once was, wanting her father's approval and never quite getting it. I wanted to say something to heal the gap between us, but she was already walking away. "I hope it makes you happy," she said at the door. Not angry, just tired. "The vineyard. I hope it's worth it." Then she too was gone. Just Mr. Vaughn and I remained, and the papers that had just changed my life. Mr. Vaughn carefully put the documents back into their folders. "Your grandfather was an extraordinary man," he said. "Not always easy, but truly remarkable." I nodded, still trying to process everything. "When did you find out about the codicil?" "He had me prepare it 3 weeks ago after he found the changed will, but he only wanted it shown if you brought the letter." He looked at me thoughtfully. "It was a risk. You might not have." "I almost didn't," I admitted. "I didn't know what it said." "That," Mr. Vaughn said with a small smile, "is exactly why he trusted you with it." He slid the folder toward me. "These are your copies. The originals will be filed. I suggest you talk to your own lawyer, but I assure you, everything is solid." I took the folder. It felt surprisingly heavy. "Thank you." He nodded and stood up, signaling the meeting was over. "Your grandfather and I were friends for over 40 years. He wasn't easy to read, but he had a great sense for people." He offered his hand. Crescent Ridge is in good hands. He believed that. Driving back to the vineyard took 27 minutes, just like always, but everything felt different. The curves of the road, the light through the trees, the first view of the vines reaching toward the ocean. It all felt changed now that I knew the vineyard was mine to protect. I parked by the stone cottage instead of the big house. I needed the comfort of my own space. Emma would be waiting. I told her not to come to the will reading. I wanted to face it alone. Now I wish she'd been there to see how it all unfolded. But as I stepped out of the car, I realized something important. The vineyard hadn't changed. The vines still needed care. The wine still waited in the cellar. The land would go on, like it always had, untouched by our family drama. What had changed was inside me. I finally felt sure. My grandfather had seen me clearly. Despite all the family mess, someone had known what mattered to me. I looked over the rolling hills, the vines planted by my great-grandfather, the soil holding our family's history. The sun hit the old sign. Crescent Ridge, established 1924. And for the first time in weeks, my chest felt lighter. Emma stood in the doorway, silently asking. I held up the folder. She smiled, finally relieved. As I walked toward her, toward home, I understood what my grandfather had really left me. More than land. He gave me the chance to keep something alive, to continue a story. Some legacies aren't about money or land. They're about values, promises, and doing the right thing. About knowing that even when someone's gone, their spirit stays in what they've built. My grandfather knew that. And because I opened a letter I almost ignored, I could now carry that legacy forward. What matters isn't just getting a legacy, it's how you take care of it. In the days that followed, while gossip spread through the wine community, I got up every morning at sunrise and returned to the vines. I worked. I planned. I prepared for the future. There would be problems, legal threats from Marcus, awkward family dinners, the push to modernize. But out among the vines that had seen so much family history, I felt ready. Some wines need time to show their true character, my grandfather once said. He didn't just mean wine. He meant people too. He meant family. He meant the slow, often hard process of becoming who you really are. By giving me that sealed letter, he gave me more than documents. He gave me trust, and the chance to prove that what he built still mattered. The vineyard would go on, the wine would flow, and the story would continue, exactly as he wanted.